As I said before, this is Missions Emphasis Month, and we have a special speaker here today. I'm so glad that Brother Tyler's here and his family. Tyler Mallett, M-A-L-L-E-T-T, is that correct? Okay. What nationality is that?
I'm sorry, I haven't done my DNA back.
You haven't done your DNA? I'm so excited to have him here. He's a mission. He and his wife and family are missionary. He'll introduce them missionaries to Niger, and he's a pilot. Interesting. When I was in Bible college, I thought that I was going to be a missionary pilot. I thought I was going to New Guinea as a missionary, and I thought for sure I would need my pilot's license in New Guinea if I was going to be a missionary to back into the bush. As a matter of fact, Brother Tyler, you'll understand this, when I was about a 15-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy, I really felt God tugging my heart toward New Guinea. And so many a night, think about being a 15-year-old boy, many a night I would sleep on the floor at my house, trying to get used to sleeping on the ground in New Guinea. And I remember I had a map of New Guinea. Somehow I got a map of New Guinea, and I would spread it on the ground in my closet. And I would pray for the cities of New Guinea, all the little towns, anything that had a name, I would pray for it. And I really felt that God was calling me there. I got to Bible college, and God changed my direction. And I praise God that He did, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing what God made me for. But at least I had a desire. They used to preach in chapel, and they say you can't steer a parked car. That's true. You can't steer a parked car. If you're going somewhere, then you can steer. And so I had a destination, New Guinea, and God said, "No, we're going to steer you this direction, and we're going to have you pastor a church." And so I'm really excited to have a missionary pilot in our service today. And I met him up in Shelby when I was doing some work up there. By the way, I hate Shelby. Is that on video? Can you edit that out? It's the grumpiest town I've ever been to in my life. It is just a grumpy town. I think they're just too cold. I don't know what it is. I have a good pastor friend who's pastoring up there, doing a great job up there. And I was up doing some work on his building, and I met Brother Tyler just one day, and I invited him down for our March Missions Emphasis Month. He's going to come and share his heart with you and speak to you today and preach to us today. And I'm so glad he's here. Let's give him a big hand, Brother Tyler.
Well, yes, very good to be here. My path to missions is totally different. Hopefully you get a taste of that as I speak. But yeah, we're only here. We just went to Niger in January of last year, and we're planning to be there for a full term. But we unexpectedly found ourselves expecting a baby. So we just come home for 3 months. We got here mid-December. We're here for about another 3 weeks, and then we'll head back. But had our little baby boy about 7 weeks ago. And he spent a couple weeks in the NICU in Great Falls, so I think that's probably where the other little fella might be, and just a great experience there. Wonderful staff, wonderful setup, so we were very happy with that. So I'm sure Oliver is in good hands. So let me introduce my family. My wife Jessica is from Shelby. I'm an Alberta boy. So you'll hear it a little accent probably every once in a while, but grew up on the farm, so I'm intimately familiar with this time of year and nighttime checks and pulling calves and all that good stuff. But my brother has taken over our farm up there, so I get to travel the world. So Jessica's from Shelby. Mia, our oldest, is 11, and Asher is 7. Karis is 6, and Oscar is 7 weeks. So we didn't think we were going to be a family with 4 kids, but God had other thoughts. We were with a mission organization called SIM. SIM began in 1893 as Sudan Interior Mission up in kind of the northeastern area of Africa. And that was they wanted to get interior. There hadn't been a lot of missionaries in that area, and that was their goal way back then. And since then they've grown and taken a number of smaller mission organizations under their wings to be a larger group, and now they're in over 65 countries, 2,000 or more missionary units, families that come from 50 countries themselves. So it's a very large organization, lots of diversity as far as the nationalities of the people that work there. But we were attracted to SIM because they have this philosophy of responding to need while proclaiming the gospel and equipping the church. And we like that. It's practical, and it really allows them to really take anybody that has a desire to spread the gospel with whatever gifts and talents they have, and they'll find a place for them. They stick them where they can be used. So it's not a denominational thing or anything like that. We really appreciate their philosophy of ministry. So Jess and I actually met in the Ivory Coast. We were both teachers. My first career was a teacher. I hadn't really been thinking about piloting yet during university, but we met in the Ivory Coast. We were teaching at a school for missionary kids there. And then Ivory Coast began to have some troubles back in 2001, some civil war. And so after a series of evacuations, a couple evacuations, we got married in Senegal, another country in West Africa, and then we went back to Ivory Coast, got evacuated again, and found out they needed some teachers in this country called Niger, which we didn't know at the time really where Niger was. Anybody know where Niger was before this morning? Excellent. There's not many. A few more people know where it is now because there were some U.S. soldiers that were killed there last year, I think. So that got some publicity, unfortunately, that way. But there's Niger in West Africa, kind of smack in the middle. And while we were there, I taught in the school, and Jess did some work in the administration office, which she does now as well. But it was while I was there that I started hanging out with some of the pilots, because we got to be friends with them early on, and on the weekends when I wasn't doing school or during the summer vacation, I'd go up to the hangar and help with projects, and got to go on a few flights, and really became intrigued with missionary aviation and just saw the real benefit that it was to the missionaries and how they appreciated it so much, and just started beginning to hear stories of missionary aviation that I hadn't really been familiar with. And they said, well, there's this school called Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and they have a flight program. It used to be down in Tennessee, but now I think it's up in Spokane. I said, well, that's kind of close. And so after our time in Niger, we went home and prayed about that. We had both kind of felt leading in some different directions, didn't really know what it was going to be, but we didn't think we'd be in the classroom forever. And this seemed attractive, and so signed up for the course at Moody in Spokane, and went through the course, did fine, and ended up working at the school for 3 years. So we spent 7 years in Spokane, and then spent a couple more years raising our support and getting ready to go, and finally, last year we finally made it over. So it was a long process between those days when we found out where Niger was, and between the time we got to go back, but we're certainly glad that we have finally made it over there. Really enjoyed our first year. Oops. Niger's a desert country. Some of it does look like that. There's a picture from space. So brown is sand, and green is where things grow. So just on the southern border of Niger, it's called the Sahel region. It's kind of a transition zone between temperate tropical place and the desert. That's where the bulk of the population in the country lives. But 80% of the country is the Sahara Desert. And so there's some pretty hot temperatures there. 115, 120 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of the peak that we see. Right now, we just missed the pool season coming back here, which is kind of a bummer, but
Oh, no, you didn't.
yeah, we got our share. Anyways, you know what? We're thrilled to have snow and cold. That's okay. About 20 million people live in Niger, so it's a big country. It's about the size of 2 Texases with 20 million people, so there's lots of room, and it's mostly because there's nobody living up in the desert, really. The bulk of the population is in that southern portion. SAM's been working in Niger for about 90 years. It's a very, very poor country. If you look at the United Nations Human Development Index, and you scroll all the way to the bottom, number 189, that's where you find Niger. And that's based on life expectancy, access to education, income, things like that. So it's a tough place to live. It is a Muslim country, 95 to 98% Muslim, less than 1% Christian. There is a church in Niger that, you know, SIM doesn't run the churches. We're there to partner with the churches, help them get started, and then let them go. And so there is a Nigerian church. And it is growing, but it's a slow, tough slog. I think lots of missionaries go there and never see a convert. So it is a long-term vision for SIM to be there, and we keep praying and working hard. And we never know when the door might close there. I mean, Niger really is the last open country. You go farther north, you're into Islamic State countries, okay? So we're welcome there. We can go in as missionaries right now, but that could really change anytime. There's the Grand Mosque in the capital city. So like Christianity, a lot of the Muslims are Muslim because they are from Niger. You know, we're Christians because we're from the States. So there's a lot of them that maybe aren't totally devout. Definitely lots that aren't the extremists that we hear about in the news. And most of them are fairly open to having spiritual conversations. So that's a plus. They may not buy into it right away, but at least they'll have the conversation. Not many people go to school. Part of that Human Development Index, there's not a lot of education, but I think the average is about 5 years for the ones that can go, but literacy and reading and writing rate is like less than a third of the country, so under 30%. But a lot of the kids will go to a Quranic school where they study the Holy Book of Islam. But if you're a purist, you do that in Arabic, which none of them really speak or understand. So basically what they're being taught are these verses in Arabic, and they learn them and they recite them and they write them out on their wooden slates. They don't really understand what they're writing or reading, so it's kind of a useless exercise, really. But it's all part of the Muslim faith. It's a very check off the boxes, works-based type religion, and so this is part of it. But they'll do things like that tablet there. They'll wash the ink off and drink it, you know, and think they're getting even more inside. So things like that I had never really heard of before we went there. So it's a religious country, but it's, you know, spiritually starving. They're physically hungry, and it's a hard place that way, but it's also very hungry spiritually. Lots of work there. They're essentially lost. And that's what I kind of like to talk about this morning. Nobody really likes to be lost. If you've ever been lost, you probably know it's that kind of helpless feeling. And really, from a spiritual standpoint, they have that. They might not realize it, but that's kind of the state that they're in. There's a quote by Tolkien that says, "Not all who wander are lost." And this conjures up usually images of a person, you know, we think, oh, free spirit, no cares in the world, no boundaries. You'd be so happy, right? Well, in reality, you know, this is usually describing someone who's a bit rebellious, don't bug me, don't fence me in, don't tell me what to do. And really, to us, if we look past the happy-go-lucky facade, maybe, is really someone who doesn't have any direction or purpose in their life. I mean, you can kind of pity them in their lost state. And as a pilot too, we take a lot of measures to make sure we don't get lost. We have maps and charts to compare what we see on the ground with what we're seeing on our chart. GPS is huge now. We use it a lot. There's lots of dust in Niger, so we're flying in low visibility conditions quite often, so GPS is a real treat. We have transponder, an instrument in the plane that helps us be visible to the air traffic control. They can keep track of us, we can talk to them on the radio so that we know where we are. Lots of ways to prevent getting lost or being lost. And now today we have, as Christians, we have our Bibles, right? That's our spiritual GPS. It can keep us from wandering. We have pastors, we have other Christian friends to keep us on a path, to keep us from wandering off that path. And so we take steps to not get lost. But what happens when somebody does get lost, or they've wandered from the faith, they've maybe were a Christian at one point and now just kind of are doing things that you wouldn't really expect a Christian to do, or they've just kind of turned their back on God. There's that case, and then there's the ones that don't even know they're lost. They think they're fine, but they really have no idea. And that's a scary place to be for someone thinking they're fine and really, totally lost in a bad way, in a bad direction. James has something to say about this. James 5:19-20, it says, "My brothers, if anyone among you wanders from the truth, and someone brings him back, let him know that whoever brings back a sinner from his wandering will save his soul from death and cover a multitude of sins." Now, they didn't have the Bible back then. This probably was written somewhere around 60 or 70 AD. James is a half-brother of Jesus, and after Jesus' resurrection, he believed that Jesus was the Savior and began leading a church. I don't know if he was a leader, but he was definitely part of a faith community. He had a body like this, and so it seems like he's probably seen some people that he has known who started with him wander. Okay, and they're doing things that maybe aren't very Christian, and so he's writing a letter to this group of people and just saying, hey, if we don't get these wanderers back, their soul could be headed for death. And I mean, there's another sermon in there about eternal salvation and things like that, but there's just that concern when you've seen someone looking to Jesus and being part of that community, that if they wander, you care about them, you want to bring them back. And so he writes this, and his focus is to bring them back. Okay, and in a missions context, we're not really always